Every evening, Mr. Oliver sat on the cold sidewalk, clutching his worn cardboard sign. One rainy night, he shuffled into La Belle Lumière, the city's fanciest restaurant, hoping just for a warm cup of soup. "Sir, we don't serve you here," the waiter said with a shrug. Oliver's heart sank, yet what happened next changed everything. Instead of walking away sad, he did something so kind and brave that the whole room fell silent. Chefs left the kitchen, diners put down their forks, and even the maitre d' couldn't believe his eyes. In that quiet moment, Oliver taught everyone a lesson about love, courage, and how a single act can light up the darkest night. Before we start the story, leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Like and subscribe to support our community. Your support means a lot to us. Now, enjoy the story as we continue. Oliver sat on his little wooden crate outside the fancy restaurant. His coat was old and thin, and the rain made it feel even colder. He wrapped his threadbare blanket tighter around his shoulders and took a deep breath. Just 2 years ago, Oliver had a warm home. He worked at a small cafe, laughed with friends, and dreamed of opening his own bakery. But when the bakery owner sold the shop, Oliver lost his job. Bills piled up. One by one, his savings disappeared, and soon he had no place to live. He tried friends' couches, church shelters, and leftover soup lines. Every night, he prayed for a little kindness, a warm meal, a dry bench, a friendly smile. But many people hurried past, their eyes on the ground. Tonight, though, Oliver felt hopeful. He remembered the rich smell of chicken soup that drifted out of La Belle Lumière. He thought of the steaming bowl he might hold in his hands. If only one kind waiter would offer a small cup. Oliver stood and shuffled through the puddles to the glass door. He could see the elegant tables, white tablecloths, and glowing chandeliers inside. His heart beat fast. A polished waiter noticed him at the door. Oliver cleared his dry throat and said softly, "Excuse me, sir. Just a cup of soup, please." The waiter looked down, adjusting his tie. "I'm sorry, sir," he said coldly. "We don't serve your kind here." Oliver's eyes filled with tears. He nodded and turned away, his heart breaking. But then something inside him shifted. Instead of walking off, Oliver wiped his tears, took a step forward, and gently tapped on the glass. The waiter frowned and opened the door a crack. Oliver spoke again, voice calm but firm. "If you won't serve me, I will serve someone else." The waiter glared. "What do you mean?" Oliver smiled a little. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small sponge cake wrapped in paper. It was the only food he had that night. He held it out through the door. "In here," he said softly, "I saw a little boy sitting with his mother. His face looked sad. Maybe he's tired of fancy food and wants something simple." The waiter hesitated. Inside, the little boy stared at his mother, head resting on his hand, frowning. He looked bored and hungry. Oliver handed the cake to the waiter. "Please give this to the boy." The waiter frowned but stepped back and let Oliver inside. He walked straight to the table by the window, where the boy sat. Oliver leaned down and placed the cake gently before him. The little boy's eyes lit up. "Thank you, sir," he said, taking a big bite. In that moment, the restaurant fell silent. The chef peered out from the kitchen, the diners stared with surprised eyes, and the maitre d' quietly closed the door behind Oliver. Oliver stepped back. He never planned to be a hero. He just wanted to share the little kindness he had. But that night, he showed everyone the power of giving, even when you have very little. The next morning, Oliver woke as the sun painted soft gold on the city's rooftops. He rubbed his eyes and smiled at his small wooden crate. Last night's kindness filled his heart with warmth. He thought of the boy's bright smile and the hush that fell over La Belle Lumière. He stood and stretched, feeling the cool breeze on his face. Today, he would find a way to help more people, or maybe even find help for himself. With careful steps, Oliver gathered his few belongings, a tattered backpack, a half-used bar of soap, and the pocket watch his grandmother gave him long ago. He tucked the watch close to his heart. Across town, inside La Belle Lumière, the maitre d', Mr. Ramsay, paced beside the empty table. He tapped his polished shoes on the marble floor and thought about the stranger's courage. "He gave a cake to a boy," Ramsay whispered to himself. "And he did it without anger." Ramsay wondered if Oliver knew how much his small gift mattered. Meanwhile, Chef Celeste stared at the closed kitchen door. She recalled the moment Oliver stepped inside. No jacket, no fancy shoes, but a gentle spirit shining brighter than any chandelier. In that instant, she decided to bake a fresh loaf of bread each night and give it to someone in need. Her heart brimmed with purpose. Outside, Oliver walked down the busy street. A sharp-knuckled woman hurried past, clutching her purse. A young man in a suit almost tripped over Oliver's box. But Oliver only noticed the small things: a stray puppy looking hungry, an old woman with tired eyes and a bent cane. He knelt to offer the puppy a few crumbs from his pocket and placed a gentle hand on the old woman's arm, whispering, "You're not alone." Back at the restaurant, diners spoke in low voices about the mysterious homeless man who brought kindness into their world. Mr. Ramsay decided to do something bold. Tomorrow, at the start of dinner service, he would offer homeless guests one free meal each night. He hoped Oliver might come back. As day turned to evening, Oliver found himself drawn back to the glowing windows of La Belle Lumière. He paused under the lamps and watched the golden light spill onto the sidewalk. His heart thumped with hope and worry. Would they remember him? Would they welcome him now? He took a deep breath, gathered his courage, and stepped toward the door. Inside, a hush fell as waiters and chefs recognized him. Mr. Ramsay smiled and opened the door wide. "Welcome back, friend," he said softly. Oliver's eyes filled with tears of joy. He realized something powerful. When one person shows love, it spreads like light in the dark. And tonight, Oliver's heart would grow even brighter. The next night, Oliver returned again, this time wearing a clean shirt someone had donated at the shelter. His shoes were still worn, and his coat had patches, but he held his head high. When he stepped inside La Belle Lumière, something magical happened. A round of soft applause greeted him. Diners turned to smile. A waiter guided him not to the corner, but to a real table. His own table. Oliver sat, unsure of what to do. He'd never seen so many silver spoons and folded napkins. A gentle server, Anna, leaned down with a kind smile. "Would you like the chef's special tonight?" Oliver nodded slowly. "Yes, please." From the kitchen, Chef Celeste peeked out. She wiped her hands on her apron and came to greet him herself. "We made something from your world, Oliver," she said. "Warm beef stew with thick bread rolls. Just like a bakery might serve." Tears filled Oliver's eyes. "It smells like home," he whispered. As he ate, he noticed something strange. A man in a business suit came over. "You're Oliver, right?" the man asked. "My son was the boy you gave that sponge cake to. He still talks about it." Oliver smiled shyly. He seemed like he needed it. "Well," the man continued, "I own a small bakery. We need someone who knows bread. Someone with heart." Oliver blinked. "Me?" The man nodded. "You." The entire restaurant seemed to glow brighter. That night, Oliver didn't just receive a meal. He received something more: dignity, hope, and a chance to start again. The next morning, Oliver stood in front of a little brick shop called Sunrise Breads. Its windows were fogged with the scent of cinnamon and fresh dough. Above the door, a hand-painted sign swayed in the wind. He clutched the bakery owner's business card in one hand and his grandmother's pocket watch in the other. For a moment, he hesitated. What if they changed their minds? What if he failed? But then he remembered the boy's smile. "The chef's stew." Mr. Ramsay's words. "Welcome back, friend." He pushed the door open. Warmth hit him like a hug. Behind the counter, trays of crusty bread glowed under soft lights. 2 bakers were kneading dough, their sleeves rolled high. The bakery owner, Mr. Peterson, looked up from the register and grinned. "Right on time," he said. Oliver stepped forward. "I've never worked in a place this nice." "You don't need fancy shoes to make good bread," Peterson replied. "Just a good heart." He handed Oliver an apron, soft and clean. The embroidered words read "Sunrise Breads, made with heart." In the back, Oliver met Mia, a quick-witted baker with flour in her hair and a laugh that warmed the room. "You ever made sourdough?" she asked. "Once. Long ago." "Good," she said, tossing him a lump of dough. "Let's get your hands dirty again." As the hours passed, Oliver's old skills returned. He remembered how to mix with care, fold with love, and wait with patience. His fingers moved with purpose. When the bell above the door jingled and customers walked in, the smell of his bread greeted them first. At noon, a boy walked in with his mother. It was the same boy from the restaurant. "There he is," the boy shouted, running up to Oliver. "You're the cake man." Oliver laughed, wiping his hands. "And you're the brave boy." The boy held out a drawing, a picture of Oliver handing him a sponge cake. Above it, in crayon, it read, "Thank you for being kind." Oliver knelt down, touched. "This is better than a paycheck." Mr. Peterson smiled from the counter. "About that, your first one's coming soon." Days turned into weeks. Oliver became part of the Sunrise family. He opened the shop early, learned to make croissants from scratch, and added a new item to the menu, Oliver's sponge cake. It became the best seller. But he didn't forget the street, the shelter, or those still in need. Every Sunday evening, after closing, Oliver filled a basket with leftover loaves and sponge cakes. He walked the familiar sidewalks and handed them out with a smile. People began calling him the Bread Angel. One rainy evening, he returned to his old crate. A boy in ragged clothes sat there, shivering. Without a word, Oliver took off his coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. He handed him the last piece of sponge cake. The boy looked up. "Why?" Oliver smiled softly. "Because someone once did the same for me." The sky was soft and pink as Oliver walked to his new job the next morning. He still couldn't believe it. Just a few days ago, he had been cold and hungry on the sidewalk. Now, he was going to work at a real bakery again, doing what he loved. He took deep breaths as he stepped through the bakery door. It was warm inside, filled with the scent of rising dough and cinnamon. His heart felt full already. "Morning, Oliver," called out Mr. Jacobson, the kind man who owned the bakery. He wore a white apron and had flour on his cheeks. "Come on in. Let me show you around." Oliver smiled wide. "Thank you, sir. I'm ready to learn again." Mr. Jacobson showed him everything. The mixers, the ovens, the wooden shelves lined with fresh loaves. But Oliver didn't need much teaching. As soon as he touched the dough, his hands remembered what to do. It was like riding a bicycle or tying a shoe. His fingers moved gently, folding and shaping with care. The other workers watched quietly. One whispered, "He's really good." By noon, the first batch of bread was done. Golden and warm, with steam rising from the tops. Mr. Jacobson picked up a piece and smiled. "This is perfect, Oliver." For the first time in a long time, Oliver laughed. Not a little laugh, but a deep, happy one. He felt proud. He felt useful. He felt like himself again. At the end of the day, Mr. Jacobson gave him a small envelope. "It's your pay," he said kindly. "It's not much, but you've earned every bit." Oliver held the envelope to his chest. He hadn't seen one in years. He used part of it to buy warm socks and a sandwich. The rest he gave to the shelter that had helped him. That night, as Oliver walked back to his little corner under the bridge, he looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you." His heart felt warm, like freshly baked bread. Because even the smallest glimmer of hope, when shared, can light the way for many. The day started like any other. Oliver arrived early at the bakery, his hands already dusted in flour before the sun climbed fully into the sky. The soft rhythm of kneading dough grounded him. Stretch, fold, press, repeat. With every loaf, he was shaping not just bread, but a life rebuilt from kindness. But something unusual happened that morning. A knock sounded at the side door. Mr. Bennet opened it to find a teenager, thin and pale, with dirt-smudged cheeks and hungry eyes. "I heard you gave someone like me a chance," the boy said quietly. "Do you have any extra bread?" Oliver paused, a half-shaped loaf in his hands. He saw himself in that boy, shivering, uncertain, desperate for warmth and a little hope. Without hesitation, Oliver wiped his hands and came forward. "What's your name?" "Lucas," the boy replied. Oliver glanced at Mr. Bennet, who gave a small nod. "Come in, Lucas," Oliver said gently. "You're not alone." That day they fed Lucas. Not just a crust, but a warm, buttered roll and a cup of hot cocoa. As he ate, others arrived. An elderly man with missing buttons, a mother with a toddler, a woman with no shoes. Word had spread that the bakery wasn't just serving bread, it was serving kindness. By noon, the sidewalk outside had formed a quiet line. Oliver stood by the window, watching them. "We need to do more," he said. Mr. Bennet folded his arms. "We can't feed the whole city, Oliver." "But we can start with a few," Oliver said softly. "One loaf, one heart at a time." And so, a plan was born. Each morning, they began baking an extra tray of loaves, soft, crusty, golden. At lunch, Oliver would step outside and hand them out. No questions asked. No judgments. Just fresh bread and a smile. Soon, customers noticed. One woman added a $100 tip with a note, for the bread line. A schoolteacher brought in canned goods. A young couple offered to help serve. The ripple had returned, stronger this time. The line outside became more than a line. It became a community. People shared stories, sang songs, offered hugs. And at the center of it all was Oliver, the man once turned away from a restaurant, now feeding others with his hands and heart. One evening, as the last loaf was handed out, a little girl with tangled hair tugged at Oliver's sleeve. "Are you an angel?" she whispered. Oliver knelt beside her, smiling through tears. "No, sweetheart. I just remember what it's like to be hungry." As the sun dipped behind the city skyline, casting a golden light over the bakery's brick walls, Oliver looked up with a full heart. He'd lost everything once. But now he had something richer than wealth, a purpose. And he knew, deep down, the best was yet to come. Word of Oliver's kindness had traveled far beyond the doors of La Belle Lumière and Mr. Bennet's bakery. Newspapers printed the story of the sponge cake and the silent restaurant. A local blogger called him the man who brought warmth. Oliver, once invisible to the city, now found himself noticed, but not just for his story. People saw his heart. One sunny afternoon, a group of schoolchildren passed by the bakery. Their teacher pointed to Oliver through the window. "That's him," she whispered, "the man who shared his only food." The children pressed their faces against the glass. Oliver smiled, wiped the flour from his hands, and stepped outside. "Did you really give away your last cake?" a small girl asked, her eyes wide. Oliver nodded gently. "Yes. He needed it more than I did." "Why?" another boy asked. Oliver knelt beside them. "Because kindness doesn't depend on how much you have. It depends on how much love you're willing to give." A hush fell over the group. Then the smallest boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a candy. "You can have mine," he said, holding it up. Oliver smiled, eyes brimming. "Thank you. That's the sweetest gift I've ever received." Back inside the bakery, Mr. Bennet watched from the door. "Oliver," he said as the kids waved goodbye, "how would you feel about starting a small program? Something like kindness cakes. A day each week where we give out fresh loaves or pastries to anyone in need." Oliver's face lit up. "I'd love that." And so, Kindness Cakes was born. Every Friday, a special table stood at the front of the bakery with a sign, "Free for those who need a little love today." Homeless men, struggling mothers, lonely elders, each one came not just for the bread, but for the warmth Oliver gave with every smile and kind word. But it didn't stop there. Other restaurants joined in. Soon, the city had a movement. Serve with heart. It wasn't about pity. It was about dignity. About seeing people, not as problems, but as souls. One day, as Oliver swept the front steps of the bakery, a black car pulled up. A woman in a gray suit stepped out. "Mr. Oliver?" He looked up, brushing flour from his apron. "Yes. I'm with the mayor's office. We'd like to invite you to speak at our annual community night. You've sparked something special here." Oliver blinked. "Me? Speak." She smiled. "Yes. We need voices like yours." That evening, as the stars blinked overhead, Oliver sat on his wooden crate for a moment of quiet. He looked at the candy the little boy had given him. He hadn't eaten it. It sat in his pocket as a reminder that even the smallest act of love can bloom into something vast, something alive. That evening, La Belle Lumière shimmered with candlelight and quiet music. The maitre d', Mr. Ramsay, straightened the silverware on table 9, the best table in the house. He wasn't expecting a celebrity or city mayor. Tonight, the most important guest was someone who once stood shivering outside the very same door. Oliver. He arrived in a clean blue shirt, his coat freshly sewn by a kind tailor he had helped at the shelter. In his arms, he held a box of warm cinnamon rolls from the bakery, tied with a simple ribbon. "Welcome, Mr. Oliver," Anna said, grinning as she pulled the door open wide. He blushed. "Mr. Oliver? That sounds so formal." "Well, tonight you're our guest of honor," she replied, leading him in. The restaurant quieted again as eyes turned toward him, but this time it wasn't with pity or confusion. It was respect. At his table sat Chef Celeste, Mr. Bennet, young Max and his mother, and even the quiet dishwasher who had once slipped him a bread roll behind the scenes. They had come not for food, but for him. Mr. Ramsay stood to speak. Oliver reminded us all that kindness doesn't come from wealth or status, but from the heart. Tonight, we honor not a customer, but a friend. The staff brought out a simple, beautiful meal, a roasted vegetable tart, fresh salad, and one of Oliver's own cinnamon rolls for dessert. As they ate, Oliver smiled through happy tears. He had once believed he had nothing to offer. But now, sitting at that table, he realized he had given something no money could buy: dignity, kindness, and light. After dessert, Mr. Bennet handed Oliver an envelope. "We want to open a second bakery downtown," he said. "And we'd like you to manage it." Oliver gasped. "Me? You have more than skill," Mr. Bennet said. "You have a heart that brings people together." Oliver held the envelope close, overwhelmed. As the night ended, he stood and raised a glass of sparkling apple cider. "Thank you for seeing me, not as what I was, but as who I could be." And the room rose with him. That night, the man who once stood outside in the rain walked out of La Belle Lumière not just full, but full of purpose, surrounded by the kind of family that life, not blood, had given him. Spring melted into summer, and the days grew longer and kinder. Oliver stood outside La Belle Lumière one warm evening, holding a small potted plant. Its tiny green leaves curled toward the sunlight, much like Oliver had grown toward hope. The restaurant had just celebrated its Day of Kindness, an idea born from Oliver's first sponge cake moment. Tonight marked the 1-year anniversary of that unforgettable evening. Inside, the dining hall buzzed with warmth, not just from the lights or the food, but from the laughter of people who had come to honor kindness. Chef Celeste was plating dishes with extra flair, Mr. Ramsay was polishing wine glasses with a gentle smile, and Anna, the waitress, had brought her little brother, who insisted on meeting the cake man. Oliver stepped inside and was greeted like family. Diners clapped gently. A violinist played in the corner. On one wall, framed photos captured the journey. Oliver handing out bread at the shelter, laughing with bakery staff, hugging the boy he once gave the cake to. He walked over to his usual table, the one they now called the Heart Table. A small brass plaque had been added, reserved for those who give when they have little. Mr. Bennet entered soon after, carrying a special box. "Oliver," he said, setting it on the table, "I've been holding this for the right moment." Inside the box was a set of keys and a simple letter, "Welcome to your new bakery, co-owned by you." Tears welled up in Oliver's eyes. "You earned it," Bennet said. "You didn't just bake bread. You gave people a reason to believe again." Just then, the little boy from that first night ran up to him with a fresh drawing. It showed Oliver in a superhero cape, handing bread to a line of smiling people. "You're my hero," the boy said. Oliver knelt beside him. "You were my reason to try again," he whispered. Later that night, Oliver stood at the front of the restaurant. He looked around the room at the faces of those who once ignored him, now shining with admiration. He didn't speak for long. "I was cold and hungry when I walked in here," he said. "I had no home, no money, nothing but a cake. But now I know, the smallest gift can open the biggest doors. You don't need to be rich to give. You just need to care." The room rose in applause. Outside, the stars blinked above the city. And below them, a man who had once been invisible stood tall, not because he had wealth or fame, but because he had given love when it was all he had left. Months had passed since the night Oliver offered a simple sponge cake to a little boy. The city streets had begun to warm with the promise of spring, and Oliver's life had bloomed in unexpected ways. The bakery was now his home, not just in work but in spirit. Mr. Bennet had offered him a small room above the shop, freshly painted and full of light. Every morning, the scent of baking bread greeted him like an old friend, and every night he climbed the stairs with tired feet and a full heart. But Oliver never forgot where he came from. One crisp Sunday morning, dressed in a clean shirt and an apron smudged with flour, Oliver stood in front of a small chalkboard sign he had placed outside the bakery. It read, "Free loaf of bread every Sunday to anyone in need, no questions asked." He watched from inside as a young girl hesitantly approached, her little brother in tow. She read the sign, looked around nervously, then stepped in. Oliver greeted her with a warm smile and handed over a paper bag filled with fresh rolls. "Take 2, he said gently. "For later." More came after her, some homeless, some just struggling. And each time, Oliver offered more than bread. He offered dignity. One afternoon, as he was sweeping the bakery steps, a sleek car pulled up outside. A man in a fine gray suit stepped out and walked up to him. "Are you Oliver?" the man asked. Oliver nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." The man extended his hand. "I'm Samuel Delacroix, owner of La Belle Lumière." Oliver blinked. "Oh, yes, I remember the name." Samuel smiled. "I was traveling the night you walked into my restaurant. I returned to find my entire staff changed. Kinder. More present. They told me your story. And frankly, it changed me too." He paused, then added, "I've come to ask a favor." "A favor," Oliver said, eyebrows raised. I want to host a dinner at La Belle Lumiere. But this time, for those who would never be able to dine there. I want to open our doors and serve the ones who are usually left outside. I'd like you to help plan it. Be the guest of honor. Oliver felt the wind leave his chest. He looked down at his apron, his calloused hands, his dusty shoes, and then back up at Samuel's steady gaze. "I'd be honored," he said softly. That evening, under chandeliers that once seemed unreachable, Oliver stood in a room filled with laughter and love. Homeless families, elderly folks, and struggling single parents all sat at candlelit tables, their eyes wide with gratitude. The waiters served with real smiles. Chef Celeste was back in the kitchen, cooking with joy. Mr. Ramsay nodded respectfully at Oliver from across the room. When dessert came, each guest received a sponge cake wrapped gently in paper, just like the one Oliver had given that little boy. Oliver looked around, eyes brimming. He had come full circle, not just from homelessness to home, but from brokenness to being a builder of hope. As the night came to a close, a little girl tugged his sleeve and asked, "Are you the man who gave the cake?" He knelt down beside her and smiled. "I was. And now it's your turn someday to give someone something sweet." The girl grinned and hugged him tightly. And so, Oliver's story became more than survival. It became a legacy, a reminder that kindness doesn't need wealth or power, just a heart willing to give. The city never looked the same again. And neither did Oliver. As Oliver's story unfolds, we witness the incredible power of kindness, courage, and the ripple effects of one selfless act. His journey reminds us that even the smallest gesture can change the world around us. From his humble beginnings to finding a new sense of purpose, Oliver's resilience proves that hope is never lost, no matter how dark the night may seem. If you've been inspired by Oliver's story, make sure you don't miss out on more heartfelt tales like this. Subscribe to our Daily Stories YouTube channel for a new story every day that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the power of love and kindness. Click subscribe and join our community of story lovers, because every day holds a new story waiting to touch your heart. Glowing Star. Thank you for being part of this journey.